Everywhere in the world, and seriously, I have not met a single employer yet who would stand up and say, yes, the education system provides me exactly with what I need. Okay? Because what does an employer want? He wants a 24-year-old person speaking 5 languages, having at least 2 years of work experience, and being a good team player, having great soft skills besides high academic skills. These people don't exist, and employers know it. But the interesting thing is, nowhere else in the world, the complaints about the lack of skills of young people is as high as in North Africa and the Middle East. While at the same time, it's the region with the lowest investment from the employer side on the job training programs or internship programs or whatsoever. And it's actually, if you look at this across countries, the more the private sector is involved in the education and the training of young people, the less they complain. So that's a very interesting thing to consider. Employers are complaining about inadequate skills. However, we talk about a region, if I talk about North Africa, with very high labor migration. That means these people are good, and especially high rates for highly educated people. So somewhere in the world, and funny enough, in countries that they themselves complain about a mismatch, these people are needed. So the question is, why do they not stay in their country? Why do they find it more interesting? Besides, and that's just a side remark, I don't believe that if you have 40% of the young women being unemployed and 30% of young men, that there are not some in this pool that are good enough to be quickly trained into what the labor market in North Africa wants. Young people have a clear preference. Government jobs first, then jobs with multinationals, then national companies, and then creating your own business. Why? There are 2 reasons. It's the conditions of work, they are included the job security, and it's the wages. So is the solution to simply pay them higher wages? Well, if we could, yes, that would be the solution. But what is happening in the region? In the region, over the last 20 years, we have seen a productivity increase of 22%. In comparison, East Asia in the same period has seen a productivity increase of 350%. Nowhere in the history, nowhere in the world, wages will increase if productivity does not increase. So there was very little room in North Africa and in the Middle East to actually see wages increase. So we are in a really vicious cycle. We have very low wages, which means we get only the very low-skilled people. Because we get the low-skilled people, there is no productivity increase. Because there is no productivity increase, there is no wage increase. And we just keep repeating this cycle. On top, these very, very low increases in productivity, they are a real disincentive for companies to invest in the region. Why would I want to invest in a region that over 20 years only reached a productivity increase of 22%? The high unemployment rates also have a very, very negative impact on the investment decision of families. We hear more and more that families say, why should I send my children to school? At the end of the day, their likelihood of being unemployed is just the same. This, of course, has a very, very long-term negative impact on the overall development of these countries. Regarding the deterioration of education and the production of wrong skills, we all, in different ways and with different programs, try to fill the gap. We try to fill the gap that is there because the education system is not doing what it's supposed to do. The question is, can we fill the gap? And probably for a certain while we can, but we cannot do it forever. So it's very important that we always remind ourselves that we are only there to show the countries how it can be done. It doesn't make sense to build a parallel structure to the public education system, and then once we run out of funding or out of interest, the country is still not able to do what it is supposed to do. So I think we have to always take into consideration to really not only build the capacities of the young people, but build the capacities of the countries to actually do what they have to do. Another thing we have to be a bit careful with, and that's something that brings us back to the discussion of this morning. There is a high risk that in our work, and again, if I say our work, I mean the ILO work, the work of the EFE, of any other training provider, there is a risk that we always get the crème de la crème. We always get the best people for two reasons. A, and this was said this morning by the chairman, we are under pressure. We need to show that our programs are successful. So, of course, it's easier to take somebody who has already quite good skills than to take somebody who just does not have or doesn't seem to have these skills. And the other thing is that the good people, they look for alternatives. And we heard numerous examples today of young people. They themselves became active. They were the ones looking for opportunities. They found the EFE. They found training programs. And this already is a skill that makes them special in comparison to others. And the question is, would these people not have been successful even without our programs? So would it not be better if we developed selection criteria that are looking for not the best, but the second best? Of course, I don't want to finish on a very negative note. The problem, and I want to give you some solutions, and most of the solutions have been discussed during the day. The problem is that we need to tackle this issue from all sides. It doesn't help even if we have the best educated and trained workforce ever. If there are no jobs, it's not going to work. And if there is not a mechanism to bring these good people to the right jobs, it doesn't work either. And this means, amongst other things, that we have to invest not only in supply, demand, but also in labor market institutions that make matching. I also think we have to focus a lot on vocational training systems because they, by nature, and we also heard it today, are closer to the labor market needs, or should at least be by mandate. The problem is that in the majority of countries in the North African region, vocational training is absolutely not an option. You go to university or you'd rather not have any higher education, but vocational training is not an option. So this is something we have to work on. One issue is we cannot just say by having 50% of the people in our training courses being women, we solve the problem. This whole issue of gender needs to be tackled in a different way, in an integrated way, but in a different way, because the challenges are just too large and too different from what we are discussing. We also have to always remind ourselves, youth are not all the same. And what a young person working in the informal economy needs is completely different from a highly educated person. And all our programs need to take this into consideration. And also each country is different. This is why we need, and this brings me back to this issue of information, we need a lot of more information about what is really going on in the countries and how we can react to the specific needs of the countries. We have said it many times, we have to work with partners and in partnership. No single donor, no single NGO, no single organization and no single government can solve the problem alone. The interventions need to be monitored and evaluated at any point in time, and we heard that this is happening, but it's rare, it's still very rare. Too many resources in the past went into unsuccessful programs, and I think we just have to be honest to ourselves in this regard. All this needs to be supported, and that's a very important point, through awareness creation, as most countries are not aware of the role and the potential of young people. Youth in this region, in North Africa and Middle East, are mainly seen as a problem and not as a solution. Other regions are dreaming of a youth population as high as we have it in the Middle East and North African region. The problem is, in this region, the potential was not used. It turned into a problem. And finally, we cannot impose our solutions. The solutions need to come from the countries, A, because otherwise they are not going to keep them, and B, because they know best what is actually needed. They know their countries best. Some of what I said was probably a bit negative, a bit provocative, but as I said, I tried to summarize the discussion that takes place amongst our constituents. These are questions we get faced with on a daily basis, and when I talk about our constituents, I talk about all three parties, the workers, the employers, and the governments. I hope, nevertheless, that these points will help us all to improve our interventions in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Dorothy. You've presented it indeed with very alarming statistics, but it's good to shake us and make us look into it and see what solutions, as you mentioned, a few of them we could have. I'd like now to open the floor. If you have any questions for our experts, please.